Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this free clip of aggressive progressives on the Young Turks. This is just a preview of what you will receive with TYT membership. That means exclusive interviews, panel discussions, and more of Jimmy, and of course, me. Check out this next clip, and if you like what you see, you can access full episodes of Aggressive Progressives by becoming a member. Head to tyt.com/join now.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Aggressive Progressives. I'm here with Malcolm Fleschner, Rick Overton, and the miserable liberal Stef Zamorano. And Donald Trump had why a lot of people voted for him was because, well, what happens when the Democrats turn their back on blue-collar workers? They're going to go to a right-wing demagogue, all right? They're looking for somebody. And by the way, Trump actually ran to Hillary Clinton's left on when it came to workers. He said he was against NAFTA, he was going to repeal it, and he was going to repeal TPP, and he did. He out-lefted Hillary Clinton on economics. And he also out-lefted her on healthcare because he said he was going to give Medicare for all. He said he was going to provide it for everybody and the government was going to pay. He was lying, but at least he gave lip service to it. So now he also said he's going to bring jobs back, right? So, but that didn't happen. So remember this? He tweeted this out in May of this year. He said, there will be big news coming soon for our great American auto workers. After many decades of losing your jobs to other countries, you've waited long enough. Hey, breaking, GM Lordstown to close March 1st. More details to follow. Well, the details are that GM is going to fire 15,000 workers in North America and Canada. General Motors' decision to gut its workforce epitomizes the bad corporate behavior Republicans in Congress has incentivized for generations. So has the Democrats. Don't kid yourself. So here we go. Tax justice and labor advocates were among those who expressed outrage Monday at the news that General Motors, one of the corporate giants that benefited immensely from the Republican tax plan last year, would cut 15% of its workforce, shuttering production facilities in 3 states as well as Canada to trim costs. The automaker is closing 5 plants in Ohio, Michigan, Maryland, and Ontario, with plans to cut thousands of office jobs in January, slashing a total of 14,700 jobs. The move comes less than a year after the Republican Party pushed through its tax plan, which offered $514 million tax break to the company. According to the advocacy group Not One Penny, $100 million of those savings went to enriching GM shareholders, contrary to the GOP's claims that corporate benefits of the tax cuts would trickle down to workers in the form of raises and bonuses. Please, sir, may I have a trickle? May I have a trickle, sir, of your largesse? President Trump's steel tariffs has contributed to rising costs facing GM, and domestic steel has grown more expensive. But critics suggested that the company's huge profits and financial assistance from the government over the past several years should have left GM capable of keeping its workforce intact. We must step away from the anti-worker thinking of seeking simply the lowest labor costs on the planet, said UAW President Gary Jones. The practice of circumventing American labor in favor of moving production to nations that tolerate wages less than half of what our American brothers and sisters make must stop. More importantly, we must understand that these companies, including GM, are no longer in trouble. They're recording annual profits in the tens of billions. So just so you know, GM got $514 million from Trump tax scam, made $6 billion in profits, poured $100 million into stock buybacks, paid its CEO $22 million, received over $600 million in government contracts, and this is corporate greed run amok. And here's what Sherrod Brown says. He says, GM owes the community answers on how the rest of the supply chain will be impacted and what consequences its disastrous decisions will have on the Valley of Ohio. My office stands ready to do everything we can to help these workers. The decision is corporate greed at its worst. Even worse, the company reaped a massive tax break from last year's GOP tax bill and failed to invest that money in American jobs, choosing to build its Blazer in Mexico. For those wondering, in the past decade, the Canadian government gave General Motors $14 billion, and the United States government gave them about $50 billion. So go ahead, Stef.
Well, how are there not strings attached to that?
There's no strings attached. Like you have
so I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give you this tax break, no strings, and I'm going to hope that you're going to have more American jobs available.
So this, I want to say, you get to when you give money to GM, when they bailed out GM and they gave them all those billions of dollars, or else they would have, right? So they didn't have to. So realize what you just did. You took massive amounts of capital and you gave it to people who failed massively at business, and you told them to do the exact same thing. Keep building cars. You could have said, hey, we're gonna take all this massive amount of capital, this $50 billion, and we're gonna give it to this company, and we're gonna have them make rapid transit. We're gonna have them make trains. We're gonna have them build stuff that people actually want. You could have did that. Or you could have had strings attached, like saying that. So this goes along to what a crazy way to run a railroad, right? Why do we run our economy like this? We're at the whims of an oligarch whose only interest is his own bottom line and F the people in the community that gives him the profits. This is a crazy way to run a railroad, a crazy way to run a country, a crazy way to run an economy. Well, how else could you possibly ever do it, Jimmy? Every city in the world is always at the whims of an oligarch capitalist, right? And if he wants to pull the rug out from underneath an entire community, there's nothing you can do about it. That's the free market. That is bullshit. That is a choice made by corrupted, bought politicians to give that kind of power to an oligarch capitalist. Well, what could we have done? What we could have done was made GM a co-op. We could have made the workers the owners of that company because it's their money, it's their taxpayer money that let that place live anyway. So what happens in a co-op? Well, in a co-op, everybody gets to vote. Should we move this plant to Mexico? What do you think the town is going to say? They're going to say, no, why should we move it and kill ourselves? So that's how you have a stable economy in a stable country. You have co-ops where people get to decide, not an oligarch capitalist who's bent on screwing you. So let me throw it to my socialist friend Malcolm and see what you have to say about that.
Well, I have a lot to say about this. For one thing, the tax plan was supposed to bring jobs and it was supposed to trickle down. And at some point in time, it seems like we should maybe give up the idea that trickle-down economics works. Like it's sort of like we shouldn't take seriously people who supported the Iraq War. We should just anybody who supports trickle-down economics should be laughed off the set of it. I mean, it's so transparently obvious to everybody if you're paying attention that it doesn't work, and yet we keep going after it as if it does. I mean, at least we keep continuing to give it credence, which I find shocking. But the other thing you were saying is that why didn't we nationalize it? Why, I mean, we just give them this money free of charge. We're going to slowly transition back to giving it back to you, just like in the Wall Street bailouts. They got 100 cents on the dollar. What kind of how do I get that kind of deal?
You can't.
I mean, you can't get that kind of deal until you're totally screwing over the government, until the country. You're going to collapse the economy, and so.
So your idea of why don't we? Let's stay on that idea. What could have happened had we nationalized that? What do you mean by that?
Well, it means the government takes over, and it becomes a government-run operation. And
because they're funding it.
I mean, even in Germany, where they're not nationalized, but there are workers on the boards who would be able to say, no, we're not going to let you do this because we have an investment in the community, and I represent the working people in this. But there's nobody on the board of GM who represents the workers. So who cares?
Right.
This is the whole point. And I think it's an interesting contrast with what's going on at the border right now, where the capital knows no borders.
Oh, correct.
The free market, the capital can go wherever it wants. If I want to close this factory here and open it in Mexico, I'm going to do that because the capital is going to flow to wherever I can make the most profits. But if people want to go where they can find jobs, no, the free market doesn't apply to people.
That's right.
Only to money. Money can do whatever it wants. People, we're going to put restrictions on people, undesirable people. So that's just a little bit of my objection to this.
So isn't this a crazy way to run an economy in a railroad? Isn't this crazy that, so now the entire society has to run around worrying that a capitalist oligarch is gonna pull the rug out from underneath, not just a person or a company, but an entire community. The cities across this country are hollowed out, from New York to Los Angeles. In the middle, they're hollowed out. You go to Andersonville, you go to Rockford, Illinois, you go to Terre Haute, Indiana. These places are Erie, Pennsylvania. They are hollowed out. This is a tribute to the failings of capitalism, and nobody's doing. This is still the way we're going to do it. I'll throw it to you, Rick.
Well, I think we're watching that entity die. I think GM is dying when they're retracting that many factories at once, and whenever something big is dying, they always favor the shareholders. They start withdrawing like a chessboard, and everything's pulling closer to the king and the queen. And the king and the queen in this case are the shareholders, the ones who want to make all the profit. But then when they pull this giant kind of evacuation pull like that, it's because I think they're going down.
You think? I think it's because they think they can make more money making the Blazer in Mexico, and they say the
5
Chevy
factories.
They say the Chevy Cruze. I know, but
I mean, we're watching the beginning of a death. It's like watching a star die.
but they're making billions in profits, right?
The certain people are, but they're not making billions in profits from sales
You
the way
think?
they used to. Giant trucks and stuff like giant gasoline things. They don't have enough hybrids in their line. Japan's eating them alive.
Well, I just read that they're closing down these factories in preparation to build electric vehicles.
That's what
Yes.
they're going to have to
So
do.
that's what they want to do, and driverless vehicles, because those.
but they have to
So
build-
now, how are those people going to be able to afford to invest in GM, buy a vehicle, when they don't have employment?
Right.
And when you're talking about that their profits are billions of dollars, boy, that trickle-down economics just never reaches the people in that community.
No.
And so Trump just tweeted, very disappointed with General Motors and the CEO, Mary Barra, for closing plants in Ohio, Michigan, he won those states, and Maryland. Trump tweeted, we are now looking at cutting all of GM's subsidies, including for electric cars. Will that happen?
Well, let's go back to here's what the guy who lost in Michigan. That's who this is, right? Abdul Al-Sayed.
Yeah, he lost the governor's race
He lost for governor.
in
He
the
said-
primary. He's a Democrat who lost in the primary.
So he says GM closing plant in Detroit Hamtramck is devastating. It's why we can't continue to rely on big corporations for job creation and why they shouldn't be getting our tax dollars. Time to invest in our schools and the means of small business like public transit. God bless that guy.
Yeah.
Of course the Democrats wouldn't let that guy win. Of course they wouldn't let that guy win. So here's what Trump had to say about it, too. Here's what he said. Well, it basically amounts to a tantrum with no ideas. Here we go.
Well, we don't like it. I believe they'll be opening up something else, and I was very tough. I spoke with her when I heard they were closing, and I said, this country's done a lot for General Motors. You better get back in there soon. That's Ohio, and you better get back in there soon. So we have a lot of pressure on them. You have senators, you have a lot of other people, a lot of pressure. They say the Chevy Cruze is not selling well. I say, well, then get a car that is selling well and put it back in. So I think you're going to see something else happen there, but I'm not happy about it. Their car is not selling well, so they'll put something else. I have no doubt that in a not too distant future, they'll put something else. They better put something else in.
So, and this is how we run our economy. We just have to, we could beg companies to stay in our cities. You just have to beg them, please don't go somewhere where you can exploit poorer people in a more desperate situation. Please stay, so please stay. It's a crazy way to run an economy. GM should have been nationalized. You need $50 billion? Guess what? Turns out you guys don't know how to run a goddamn company. You need $50 billion bailout? No, thanks. You can go somewhere else and lose another $50 billion somewhere else. That's what they should have said. And now we're going to have somebody run this company, and we're going to be a worker co-op. I can't believe this is how we run really, drive around this country. I've driven around this country for 30 years. This country is a shell of itself. There's nothing but misery everywhere. 80% of the workers live paycheck to paycheck. Do you know that 50% of all wage employees in America earn less than $30,000 a year? Do you know that's not enough to rent an apartment? They're working full time in the richest country in the world. And so this is just a crazy way to, and by the way, the Democrats have no plans. They have no ideas on how to fix this. Nancy Pelosi has no infrastructure plan. She has no jobs program. Barack Obama was president for 8 years. Where's the jobs program? There was no jobs program. You know the jobs program? Go join the military. That's their job program. That's it. So, and there's Trump he's got nothing. There's the most powerful guy in the world. And what has he got? Oh, they better get back in there or else, nothing.
Yeah, I found what he was saying a little vague. A little bit. They're selling a car. It's not selling so well. They better get a car that sells better. I hope they were taking notes on that because that is some genius business. I can see why his book sold so many. People go to his seminars.
The art of the deal.
Yeah,
huh?
there it is, genius. But even for him, who's so delusional to say, well, they better come back real soon. They're not coming back. They never come back. They never came. They're never going to come back. They never plan to come back. Then for him to even suggest such a thing, even his supporters. But this is horrible. It's 15,000 jobs. It's just a number, but that is devastating to communities. And it's not just those people. As Sherrod Brown was mentioning, it's the whole supply chain. The ripple effect of this is tremendous. in a negative way, not the kind of way Trump says. And it's going to affect even tens of thousands more people. And then all those people who now lost their job, they've also lost their health care, so they're gonna be on Medicaid potentially. This is gonna cost the government a lot of money, and a number of them are gonna wind up incarcerated. I mean, this is the inevitable cratering, as you put it, of these communities. Anybody who watches Roger and Me, you see what happens. Flint, Michigan, 20 years from now, whatever, I couldn't pronounce the name of that town that Abdullah Syed was talking about, but they're probably gonna have lead in their water in 20 years because these cities are dependent. They still are dependent on the auto industry, and if the auto industry completely flees the United States, which is what's underway, it is devastating, and it's just a number. It's 15,000 people, but it's going to be horrible. What's going to happen to these places? And Trump obviously got nothing, no answer for them.
And do the Democrats have any kind of platform that would attract people to the party because they stand for jobs, infrastructure rebuilt? I mean, what have the Democrats done to attract people to the party? What kind of programs do they make available that will help struggling families?
And I'm telling you, not one Democrat will even mention the word co-op. But this is the solution to these kind of problems which we're living in, right? So if you had a co-op, if businesses were owned by the workers, they would still make all the great decisions, still make good products and all that stuff. They just wouldn't move their company to make 5 cents more. They would keep a stable community with a stable economy.
And how does a company like Amazon make $1 trillion and people are struggling as an employee?
You mean the people who generate that profits?
Yes.
Oh, by the way, Amazon, there's a strike. I didn't have time to cover it. I wish we had time to cover it. So there's a strike happening at Amazon in Germany, the UK, Spain, and France. At the same time, it started on Black Friday. And in Spain, Amazon asked the police to intervene, no kidding, not to break up the strikers outside, but to go into the plant and monitor the workers to make sure they kept their production up. Amazon asked the cops to go into their own fulfillment center and with a gun make sure the workers kept working and their productivity didn't fail. They asked them to do that. The cops said, no, that's not what we do. We're here to keep the peace, and so no violence breaks out. Amazon, so that's Mussolini stuff right there, right? That's fascist thinking right there. And
so it sounds like the rights of the workers through the world are being tested.
Yeah, yes. And so Amazon, by the way, they have unions at Amazon in Europe. Isn't that something? They actually have unions in Europe. But we can't get unions here. Isn't that something? And the richest man in the world, who do you think runs America? Do you think Chuck Schumer and Donald Trump? Or do you think Jeff Bezos runs America? The guy who's got more money than all those guys. Jeff Bezos runs America. He's in bed with the CIA. He's got all your data. He's got it all. All that. And by the way, he's got $600 million deal, more with the CIA. He owns the Washington Post, right? He sits on a Pentagon board. Jeff Bezos. This is one guy. And he owns 51% of every transactions that happens on the internet in the United States goes through him. Talk about a monopoly. This is not a free market. We live in an oligarchy. Your democracy has already been taken from you, and the Democrats' answer to this is to support Nancy Pelosi for Speaker.
And his company's named after something that's being wiped off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Oh, because of capitalism.
Capitalism is killing the Amazon.
And by the way, what Jeff Bezos is doing is the most perverse form of capitalism. It's monopoly. So what he's doing is rigging the system so he can run at a loss and put other people out of business. And then when they go, can you imagine trying to compete with someone who doesn't have to make a profit? Because that's what Amazon is. They're a company that doesn't have to make a profit until you go out of business. So then they put Borders out of business, and now they're opening up bookstores. Isn't that something? So they can hollow out your tax base. They come into close down all the stores on your main street because they can operate at a loss. Why? Because they own politicians. Again, we live in an oligarchy. The time for incrementalism is over. So this idea that we're going to reform the Democratic Party in time to save America and the world from climate change is crazy. The tranquilizing drug of incrementalism is now being pushed by progressives. Supporting Nancy Pelosi is the tranquilizing drug of incrementalism. That is not a revolution. Bernie Sanders sheepdogging Democrats into a party headed by Nancy Pelosi for the next 2 years is not a revolution. That's incrementalism. That's the exact opposite of what Bernie's supposed to be doing. I still support Bernie and all his policies. I do not support his tactics. And again, that's another guy who won't come on my show. And not that these people owe me anything, but we do have a very popular voice of progressives. And we didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. But these people won't come on shows unless you voted for Hillary Clinton. That's me, that's all I can tell. So go sell that to your progressive base. I only go on shows that voted for Hillary Clinton.
Well, for every Bernie voter we lose, we'll pick up dozens of Hillary voters.
We're going to take a break. We'll come right back with our last segment about Hillary Clinton being horrible. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Aggressive Progressives. Hillary Clinton was recently in the UK. She gave an interview to the Guardian newspaper about immigration. And well, I just want to remind you what set the table for Trump. Here's Bill Clinton, how he used to talk about immigration.
All Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more, by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens.
We got to crack down on those. They're taking our jobs. They're taking our welfare. They're hollowing out our. That's those people with no money and no power. They're screwing everything up.
I didn't know that Trump had hired Bill Clinton as a speechwriter.
No, he did.
Well, he's the one that brought us Trump. He's the one that talked him into it. We keep forgetting.
Yeah.
You keep looking at Frankenstein's monster. You don't go up to Dr. Frankenstein ever.
Yep. That's exactly right. People don't know that Bill Clinton encouraged Trump to run, right? That's what you're saying.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. So that's how.
That was the guarantee. She'll win for sure.
So that's how. That's Bill talking about demonizing immigrants. Here's Hillary bragging she voted for.
Hi, Secretary Clinton. I was wondering what you think about like securing the Mexican border with some of the illegal immigrants that come in. Just wondering.
Well, look, I voted numerous times when I was a senator to spend money to build a barrier to try to prevent illegal immigrants from coming in.
So she voted many times for a wall.
No, it was a lovely hedge.
It's
a lovely trimmed hedge.
A barrier. What I wanted was something, maybe a plastic thing you could see through.
I like it later in the video when she leads them in chants of build the wall. That's really great.
So that's who the Clintons are. Just so you know. She also famously called black teenagers super predators. So Hillary, and they then went on to explode the prison population while gutting welfare and deregulating Wall Street, which hurt who the most? Poor black and brown people who played by the rules. So and now they called Trump a xenophobe. These are the people, and it continues to this day because here's Hillary Clinton. She says Hillary Clinton, Europe must curb immigration to stop right-wing populists. Hillary Clinton calls for reform, not open borders, in explaining European migration remarks. Europe must get a handle on immigration to combat a growing threat from right-wing populists, Hillary Clinton has said, calling on the contingent's leaders to send out a stronger signal. So come to me, do you know what she's saying? So what she's saying is, if we don't start implementing right-wing xenophobic policies and screw immigrants, we're going to have right-wing leaders get elected, and they're going to institute right-wing policies. So
the devil you know.
Yes. So now you know what's wrong with the Democratic Party, why people wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, because they knew she was a corporatist and not really looking out for them. She's there to screw them. She's there to screw immigrants. This sounds exactly like Trump. There's a little bit more to this. She says, I think Europe needs to get a handle on migration because that is what lit the flame, Clinton said, speaking as part of a series of interviews with senior centers. So let me come back to me for a second. What lit the flame, she said, was migration. What? So it all starts, when do you start looking at history? The migrants caused all this problem with right-wing populism in Europe, Well, how did we get migrants? Oh, that's right, because Hillary Clinton said we should destabilize Libya and turn it into a failed state. She said we should also go into Iraq and destabilize it and turn it into a failed state. She wanted us to be more muscular and do more bombing in Syria. She likes that we're in Afghanistan. She wants us to expand the wars. She's for wars everywhere. She's for overthrowing democratically elected governments in Honduras and installing right-wing, but...
We came, he died, we laughed.
We laughed. Hillary Clinton forgets the part about how she made the migrants, how our neoliberal IMF policies create misery in Greece. They've gotten rid of 1/3 of Greece's GDP. These Central European bankers. This is their plan. Their plan is to hurt people and hoard money for bankers. And then you wonder why there's migrants and economic refugees. And her answer isn't to fix the refugees. It isn't to help them. What is her answer? Her answer is to screw them. The people we just got done bombing, we're bombing 8 countries, turning them into refugees. And the people we're screwing over economically to screwing them. She says, now we have to screw them further and keep them out of our countries. That's Hillary Clinton. And if you want to hear a real progressive, how they deal with migration, here's what Jeremy Corbyn has to say about how to deal with migration.
The problems of the world's wars, the problems of the world's environmental crises, the problems of the world's inequality and poverty will not be solved by the construction of razor wire fences around countries, by having gunboats in the sea, by having electronic surveillance and tagging of people all across the world who are trying to achieve a place of safety. Ultimately, it can only be solved when we look at the world in a different way, to try to end the inequality across the world, to try to reduce the level of human disasters, and above all, to end the series of catastrophic wars that have so disfigured the 21st century so far. We're here because we care. We're here because we believe in people. We're here because we want to see a world of peace, not a world of war. We're here because we're part of a decent, strong, huge humanitarian movement that really does believe everybody matters, whatever country they've come from, whatever their situation in life. We reach out to fellow humanity to save them from suffering. We reach out to demand the governments of Europe and the rest of the world prevent that suffering by preventing the wars and preventing the exploitation of people in those places. That's why we're here tonight. That's what unites us. That's the message we're getting across. And that is what is so good and strong about so many people across Europe today. That is our answer to the xenophobes and the naysayers that say you can't, shouldn't, won't, never, will do anything. Yes, we will do all we can because we care, because we believe, because we are fellow human beings. Thank you very much.
Wow, so that's pretty powerful stuff. And to me, that's the kind of rhetoric that moves people's minds and hearts. And it moves people to the polls to do the right thing. The opposite is happening in the United States, where the left wing is saying the same goddamn thing. Hillary Clinton is saying the same thing Donald Trump is saying. I wish we had a Jeremy Corbyn in the United States.
I'm wondering, watching that video, I wonder if Hillary Clinton were to watch that video, if she would, at the end, she would say, what is all that noise people are making and standing up at the end? What's that? What is that for? Why do they do that? She's never experienced
that. You cut to the black and white audience, you know, with the gloved hands and the horn rim glasses, you know.
I mean, that almost made me cry the first time I saw it. I'm like a politician talking about immigration, and he's moving me emotionally, as opposed to being a right-wing maniac like Hillary Clinton. Go ahead.
How many times have you noticed friends posting word for word MSM quotes for their opinion on there, because they don't have the time. They're too busy doing their lives to make a whole opinion. The whole point of the MSM is, here's your opinion. Say this to others.
Yeah.
And you can hear them because you challenge them on it, it just goes blank. They disappear, you know, they don't have another answer to it because the TV didn't give them the follow-up answer.
Right, exactly right. You know, it's the same people it's the liberal class. It's always been the problem of the liberal class. And the more I read about the liberal class, the less I like them. As Phil Oak said, there's many different shades. There's every different kind of shade of political belief in America, and among the shadiest are the liberals. 10% to the right to the left of center are the best of times, and 10% to the right of center in the worst of, and when it affects them personally. That's what he said. So, and I think but now the center in the 60s used to be the center. Now the center is way over here, to where a guy like Barack Obama, a black guy with a Muslim name who says he's going to come in and hope and change, he actually brags that his policies are right-wing Republican. He said, if this was the 1980s, my policies would be considered moderate Republican. That's your left. So that's the Overton window moving all the way to the right. And that's where we are now. So now Hillary Clinton, who's considered a right-winger in any other country in the world, is now considered a liberal star in the United States. That's how effed up things are in the United States. That a guy like Bernie Sanders, who by the way, would be considered a centrist in Europe. Bernie Sanders he's not a far out lefty. He's a centrist. He's advocating for things that everybody else already has in Europe.
They take for granted.
Yeah, they take for granted.
Yeah, his list of recommendations.
Yeah.
For this is like everything we know he's been talking about for years.
Let's get to
representing it.
Let's get to that.
Can I just mention that?
Go ahead.
Hillary Clinton. She's just a terrible politician. I mean, what are her political instincts?
I know.
What is the point of this? What is she hoping to gain by doing this? I mean, we can argue why it's wrong and all, but just like this is part and parcel of why she lost. Is she's just not good at it.
She's not.
It's terrible. Who's advising her?
Who are the advisors?
I know. I'm going to go and appeal to right-wing crazies, and that's who the people who were supporting her when she made these statements. This article came out. All the right-wingers in Europe are like,
she's got a point.
She's one of us. Yeah, she's going to make a good point about the horrible immigrants. I'm with Hillary. I'm with her. They're all saying.
She reminds me of the ex-girlfriend that keeps showing up.
Yeah.
She keeps showing up with the same bad ideas, and like she's gonna just wear you down to go, oh yeah, no.
And if you would have, if she would have became president, this would be the kind of stuff you'd have to be defending if you voted for her. Like, no, immigration is a problem. We gotta build a barrier. She voted many times for a barrier. Bill Clinton told us that they're taking our welfare benefits. They're the worst. Now you know how you got Trump, okay? So Trump just puts an ugly face on the horrible stuff our country's been doing all along.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this free clip of aggressive progressives on the Young Turks. This is just a preview of what you will receive with TYT membership. That means exclusive interviews, panel discussions, and more of Jimmy, and of course, me. If you like what you saw, you can access full episodes of Aggressive Progressives by becoming a member. Head to tyt.com/join now.